Peter Francisco is not known like George Washington, John, our founding fathers that we think of founding fathers. Which, if in fact you go look up the term founding fathers, it is in reference to anyone who was instrumental in the birthing of our nation. So Peter Francisco is considered one of our founding fathers.
Let's do it. Rolling. Cheers, bro.
Cheers.
Back.
Back to the coffee.
Back to the coffee, which is amazing because we've been on this set now for hours upon hours, and I love my coffee, like every red-blooded American male does. But this guy drinks more coffee than anyone I've ever seen in my life. Can consume coffee literally all day. It's absolutely astonishing.
Day.
And then just fall out at the end of the day. Just pass out. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think just yesterday I drank coffee all day long, and at about 5 o'clock I was like, I need a nap. I think it actually puts me to sleep. I swear it puts me to sleep.
It's amazing.
Well, I don't have room for the coffee. Here, Rico, she's going to take her cups of coffee.
Okay, yeah, it sounds good.
We've probably consumed enough. But
thank you.
Because usually we have our coffee here on the table here in the middle, but we've moved it out of the way so we could talk about the different books that I used to write a book about Peter Francisco.
Right.
But hold on. First off, we need to address the shaved head that you have.
Yes.
Because, so Brian being the actor that he is, depending on the part and whatnot he's auditioning for, sometimes you'll have a full head of hair. Sometimes you'll have an afro.
Yeah,
I don't know.
An afro is the true word. When I grow my hair out, it can be quite comical, especially in the morning. I wake up and I swear my head looks like a lampshade. It's like... Anyways, this is actually how I typically like to wear my hair. I like having a shaved head, especially in the summer.
That is so funny.
I know.
Because my hair is thinning the older I get, and I haven't done it yet. I haven't pulled the clippers out.
Just do it, man. It's so liberating. But I just like it because I'm just like a no fuss, no muss type of guy anyway. Like the idea, like when I do have long hair, it's because it is so thick, it's slightly curly. I got to dance with it so much before I even leave the house for me to feel like it looks right. I'm just like, this isn't even worth it. I'm just like, messing with it and looking in the... I'm like, what am I doing? This is insane. I'm a dude. I'm sweaty. I'm But
the question is, see, if I shaved my hair off like that, my wife would be like, oh, hell no.
Oh, yeah. So
grow
Brooke,
something up there.
Brooke loves it.
So your wife actually...
My wife loves it. Yeah, she absolutely loves it.
For real?
When I grow my hair out, that's the reaction I get. She's like, can you please shave it off? Which, by the way, is super...
So she actually says, shave it off.
Well, yeah, so this is how we met. So I had a shaved head like this.
Because you were on Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I was on S.H.I.E.L.D. at the time. So this is what my character, how he wore his hair.
Which is the shot right behind you there.
Yeah, right up there. So a little bit of stubble, which I'm kind of clean shaven now. But yeah, so this is how we met. This is obviously the look that she likes. So when I grow my hair out... Which I have had it now for up until recently. I've had my hair grown out for a year. So what I'll do is I'll shave it and then I'm like, let's switch it up. So I'll grow it out and I'll leave it like that for a year. And then I get tired of messing with it. So I'm like, I'd shave it back off or if a job comes up or whatever. But what's funny is that entire year that my hair's grown out or something, she looks at me. She's like, no, could you grow it out? Or could you just shave it off, please? Which is, not the most empowering feeling as a man for your wife to be looking at you like,
shave it all off.
It's not the look. No.
Well, recently you shaved it into a mohawk.
Yeah, so I did a movie this past Christmas called The Loud House, A Very Loud Christmas, which is based on an animated television series on Nickelodeon called The Loud House. And the success of the animated series has been so good. It's been on for about 6 years now that they wanted to make a live action movie of it. And I got cast as this character who on the animated series just has a shaved head, but he's this really wild character. His name is Rip Hardcore.
Rip Hardcore.
Which the name in and of itself, it tells you what kind of character this is, right? So obviously the show is a comedy based on this family called the Louds. That is their last name. And there's 10 kids with one boy. His name is Lincoln Loud, who plays the title character. And his hero in the animated series is this character named Rip Hardcore, who is a
who comes up with names like that? You know what I mean? Like really,
well,
Rip Hardcore?
I got to tell you, this character is so fun to play because the character is a wilderness survival expert, and he's like this crazy cross between Ric Flair, Crocodile Dundee, and Steve Irwin. So the guy's just like off his rocker, right? So it was super fun to play because I could just get nutty with him.
That's
well,
fun.
like I said, in the animated series, he just has a shaved head like I do, but he wears this red bandana. Well, when I auditioned for this part, I had long hair and I had gotten tired of it, so I had shaved it into a mohawk, just really to kind of tease my wife because the mohawk was big.
Oh, for real? You were just doing it just to
I
mess
was
with
really
Brooke?
just to mess with Brooke. So I did it while she was not at the house. I did it so when she came home, I was gonna be like,
Hey, how you doing?
And so she came home. She's like, wow, that looks awesome. And I was like, cool. So
you were thinking she was gonna be like, no,
totally.
shave it off. She was like, oh yeah, that looks sexy.
Yes. So it was right after I actually shaved the mohawk, and I get this audition for the Loud House to play Rip Hardcore, and I'm like, this character is so wild. I'm just gonna audition with him with this mohawk,
right.
And if they don't like it, I can always shave it off or whatever. So I do the audition, and I end up obviously getting the job, and the director and obviously Nickelodeon and whoever else was in charge of making the calls loved the mohawk so much that that during filming, so I get to keep the mohawk, which has always been a dream to play a character with a mohawk. So I have this.
Oh,
awesome,
was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so I have
funny.
this awesome mohawk.
That's great.
And in the film, being the wilderness survival expert that I am, I'm chasing this creature throughout the film. That it's this crossbreed creature called a sharkadile.
Nice.
And a shark head with an alligator body, which is terrifying if you think about that in real life. But anyways, I'm chasing this thing through the city in this UTV. So I have a helmet on, and it being Nickelodeon wanting to present a good image of be safe, wear a helmet. So I have a helmet, but they love the mohawk so much that on the helmet, they actually put a mohawk on the helmet with a red bandana.
Oh,
so it was just super fun, man. So anyways, in previous shows, if you've been following this journey, I've had my hair grown out. I have now shaved it off because that movie has been picked up to a series now. So I'm hoping Rip Hardcore gets to make a full-on recurring appearance on the new one. So, and if not, we have some other things with the show.
That's right.
That we're working on that I needed to have it for. So
the look for Peter Francisco.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that look
for Peter
like?
Francisco. What does that look like?
And, that's always kind of fun. And
so we're walking through all those steps now. So, anyways, that's why the head is shaved. And it's summer. It's 100 degrees out, so it helps.
Well, what we want to talk about, I mean, people always ask, like, how did you write a book about your famous ancestor? And so that's really what the show is about.
Yeah,
really.
with not a lot of literature out there for Peter Francisco, so you had to do some digging.
I had to do a little digging, but I mean, people obviously think you must have had to like go through archives and all. I'm actually, in fact, there were some other books that have been written about Peter Francisco, and strangely enough, so I brought a bunch of them here into the studio, which we can kind of talk about. But the one that's really wild and really kind of close, which I'll bring out first. But this one here was released, I forget, in the 60s. But my grandfather, who I'm related to Peter Francisco through my grandfather, William Barrett, he lived next door to this author. Now, I did not know that. My grandfather passed away before I started even working on my book. But this author loved living next door to a real descendant of Peter Francisco. And he actually says that in the beginning of the, so I pick up this book when I'm on the journey to write a novel about Peter Francisco. And my mom's like, oh, well, there is a book about Peter Francisco. The author actually lived next door to her granddaddy. I was like, what? I didn't know that. I never once had a conversation with my grandfather about Peter Francisco, ever. Sadly. He passed away. Never was even a point of discussion. I mean, unfortunately. Now, his wife loved to talk about Peter Francisco. And that's where, that's where I would learn about Peter Francisco. Anyway, so my mom tells me about this book, and I was like, what? That's so awesome. So, I find myself reading this book about Peter Francisco. The author puts a nice little note in there at the beginning, and to our family, and so it was pretty wild. I mean, so this is one of the books, and I think you can probably find it out there. Yeah. So there's Peter Francisco, Soldier Extraordinaire.
Wow.
So that was one of the books that I read. Another one. This one is called The Virginia Giant. That I read about Peter Francisco. So another interesting read. And so that book that you're holding, Brian, the author was a journalist in the Virginia area, and so did extensive research as a journalist, just trying to unravel the story about Peter Francisco. And then this book here, this one's called The Romantic Record of Peter Francisco. This one's about 100 years old. This one was released by his great-granddaughter. And so his great-granddaughter obviously had heard the stories about Peter Francisco from her, probably. In fact, her. Think about this. I actually did know, I don't know about you, but I actually did know my great-grandfather when I was a young child. So great-granddaughter, she very well could have known like his son,
Right.
So it's fascinating when you think about like this book was probably only one generation removed from Peter Francisco. So this one was released. So I read this one. So that's The Romantic Record. Obviously, there's some romance in the story in my novel. But then, I have to move this one. So then one of the other books that's really probably one of the more factual books about Peter Francisco's legacy is this one was released in 1980, and it's The Portuguese Patriot, and it really kind of goes through some of the facts that we know about Peter Francisco. I kind of keep a few other items in here. This is like a pamphlet that came out when the stamp of Peter Francisco. So the U.S. Postal Service released a whole pamphlet about Peter Francisco with the stamp that they issued. So there's the stamp, just kind of describing, why he's on a stamp. Why the U.S. Postal Service put Peter Francisco on a stamp? So it's pretty cool little legacy. And then there's the picture of the monument from Greensboro, which you and I have been to. We'll put that picture out there on social media. But the monument there in Greensboro that stands in honor of Peter Francisco, and so it kind of references. This is referencing that. And speaking of that, there is this. This is over 100 years old. This pamphlet was released when they dedicated that statue in 1911, and it says here at the beginning, like 1910. So this is like an ancient, like old pamphlet. But it just talks about Peter Francisco, a big, massive sword that he swung, and just kind of a little bit about Peter Francisco and what they knew. So those were all the different types of books that I read to kind of then craft my own novel, Luso. So that was the fun journey. But then after I released my book, somebody said, "Well, there's a book called Badass." And I was like, "The Badass Warriors." And I was like, "No, I never even heard of that." He said, "Yeah, actually, Peter Francisco is in there. He's like one of the top badass warriors of all time." I'm like, wow. Really? That's so crazy. Like who? So this is not a book that I use, but anyway, Badass Warriors.
Let me say, so this is just about every badass warrior throughout history.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
That so if you think, over in the Asian world, China warrior. I mean, there's just warriors from all over the world that they're referencing, and Peter Francisco is one of those. So the author there obviously did a little research about Peter Francisco, puts him in there, and I guess the fact is, Peter Francisco is not known like George Washington, John, our founding fathers that we think of founding fathers. Which if in fact you go look up the term founding fathers, it is in reference to anyone who was instrumental in the birthing of our nation. So Peter Francisco is considered one of our founding fathers. But we always think of George Washington and so on. Now, there's obviously plenty of books about about George Washington.
Right.
John Adams, you think of all the different, Thomas Jefferson, the different founding fathers. Hamilton is probably the most epic Broadway show, which is about a founding father, right? Peter Francisco, though, is not one that people think of, but there are books that have been written about him. And so that's what I use to kind of unravel my story.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
So, but people usually ask, well, what is it that makes your story stand out from all the other books? Like all these books here, what is it that makes Luso stand out? And I always say, well, there was a whole love story that none of them really dove into. I mean, there's a true love story. He falls in love with a girl, but it's forbidden love. Like they're not allowed to marry. So then what? And so I kind of unravel that in my novel. So, you have to go buy the book. You have to watch the series.
That's right.
You have to see Brian on screen.
That's right.
Otherwise, you won't know. You won't have a clue what happens. Like, with Peter Francisco and Susanna. Susanna was her name. So.
Yeah. Which in real life.
Correct. Now you let the cat out of the bag, bro. You weren't supposed to say that kind of stuff.
Shoot. Sorry.
Dang it. We'll edit that out. But anyway, it has been a wild journey. I mean, people usually ask, like, oh, I don't understand how you found all those documents. And obviously, then, there's plenty of newspaper clippings. We'll have on one of the next shows, the Ono Luso Americano newspaper, where he's talking about the newspaper articles that have been written about Peter Francisco. You can go back in the archives of the Richmond Dispatch. They've been writing articles about Peter Francisco for decades. A couple centuries, frankly. So, it goes back a couple hundred years where articles and books, and there's plenty of facts out there if you want to piece together the story. Right. So that's been the fun journey, man. It's,
and a long one, but dude, what just a cool piece of history, especially to have, in your life, man, as a real descendant of this American badass. It's pretty cool.
The American badass. Mm-hmm. If there was ever something on our gravestone one day, wouldn't that be amazing to have that on your?
Yeah, he was a badass.
He was a badass.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, the next episode we'll talk about where this badass was from. I think we talked about it a little bit early on in some of our episodes, but we'll really kind of unravel it to kind of take you over the Azores, and we've got a guest that's coming on that is from the Azores and reached out to me early on when I was I released my book, and after I released my book, Francisco Cardoso, he
from Terceira.
That's right.
Not the Azores.
He'll get ticked off if you say it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, from Terceira. There's many. He's like, there's 9 islands.
Yeah.
But there's only one real island.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So tune into the next episode.
Stay tuned.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out Luso the Journey. If you are interested in more of the journey, consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, you want to check out the entire Luso the Journey playlist as we unpack more of our journey and we talk to some amazing people who've joined us along the way.